My name is Natasha. When I was born, everyone was very happy. My mother said she was crying. The doctor just said one thing, that the baby was fine, except for a slight difference in one leg. That small difference became the thread running through my entire life. People didn't call me by my name, they just called me Lame Natasha. I am Natasha, but no one ever called me by my name. At first, I didn't understand why I was treated this way. I was like any other child, I wanted to play, to laugh. But whenever I went out into the neighborhood, people's faces would change. The children's eyes didn't show curiosity, they showed hatred. One day, a girl asked her mother why I was so strange, and her mother replied so casually, "She's lame, that's why, dear." I had 3 brothers and was the only sister, but no one ever listened to my heart. I was mocked as if my very existence was a shame. My elder brothers never called me by my name, they would just shout, "Hey lame, bring water," or "Hey lame, make tea." Sometimes I wondered if they loved me at all, or maybe they did but forgot how to show it. My mother was like a second mother to me, her lap was my refuge, but even she would angrily call me names. "Natasha, listen, you never obey." I would break inside but stay silent. She was helpless too, maybe taking out her anger and frustration on me. I didn't cry, I just became quiet. Whenever the neighborhood talked about me, it wasn't by my name but by my condition. "Natasha's mother went to the market," or "Natasha fell in the street today." They recognized me by my leg, not by my eyes, words, or dreams. To them, I was a joke, a topic to talk about. I would look at myself in the mirror, an innocent face but one difference that pricked like a thorn to everyone. Sometimes I wished I were just an ordinary girl, someone to be praised, not a reason for shame. My brothers would sit with friends but never talk about me. If anyone asked if they had a sister, they'd just say yes and change the subject. I was their sister but hidden from everyone, like a secret, not a source of honor but shame. One day, my real mother held me and asked, "If I die, what will you do?" I said nothing but thought only that then people would pity me and maybe then the world would see me as a human. Now, when someone calls me Lame Natasha, it doesn't hurt because I've understood that the world only sees what is in front of their eyes, the beauty of the heart, the truth of intentions, cannot be measured. I always say, I am Natasha, and no matter what the world says, God made me this way and sent me here, and His decision is the best for me. I had no close friends in childhood, no girl my age to hold my hand and run around the street, no child willing to play with me. The street was lively with children shouting, but when I stepped out, everything went silent for a moment. Eyes would follow me like I was something unusual. Some whispered softly, others laughed loudly. One day, my mother gave me new slippers, and I was so happy I wore them to the street corner where 2 girls, Pinky and Renee, were playing dolls. Renee glanced at my leg and whispered to Pinky, and they both laughed. One said, "You're a doll too," and the other said, "A lame doll." I quickly went back home. My mother asked what happened. This wasn't the first time. Many such moments had come. I remember a cold winter evening when all the children were flying kites, and I went to the roof just to watch. Someone shouted, "Oh, the lame one came up. If she falls, it will be our fault." My hand froze, and I let go of the string. My heart said, "Go back, no one is here for you." There was a wedding in the neighborhood where kids were busy applying henna. I begged my mother to take me too. She got me ready, and when I arrived, everyone avoided me. No one said, "Come dance with us" or "Let's apply henna." I just stood aside, and when I tried to dance a little to the music, everyone laughed. One boy said, "She can dance? She can barely walk." I stayed only 2 minutes and left. My mother followed me home, quietly wiping her eyes with the edge of her sari, praying only that her daughter be given the respect people had taken away. One summer vacation, the kids organized a cricket match. I stood behind the door watching. One girl threw her bat down and said, "If the lame one plays, I won't." I silently went inside without replying. I wondered if my crime was that I was a little disabled, and then I answered myself, maybe I had become a spectacle for everyone. Some looked at me with pity, others with hatred. This was not just because of my physical difference but the shadow of society's thinking, sticking like wounds on the walls of my childhood. School was the first hope to escape the walls of my home. My mother enrolled me with prayers and hopes, saying I'd learn something and maybe over time, people would understand. I too thought maybe school would be different, maybe other kids were like me or had broader minds. On the first day, my mother wrote my name on my notebooks, packed chocolates in my bag, and came with me to the school gate. There was a strange mix of fear and hope in my eyes. When I entered, a girl loudly asked, "Why does this girl limp?" Another whispered, "Her one leg is shorter." In the first class, the teacher introduced me to everyone as Natasha, our new student. A boy loudly asked, "Can she even walk?" The whole class laughed. The teacher silenced them, but her eyes showed surprise too, maybe wondering why I was there. After the first week, I realized nothing was different. Wherever I went, laughter followed. When I opened my lunchbox, someone would ask what I was eating, saying I should be taking medicine. One day during recess, I was going to get water when someone pulled my chair away. I had fallen, and the whole class burst out laughing at me. One girl said, "Look, even the ground couldn't bear her." The teacher came and scolded everyone, but it felt like just for show. Later, she called me aside and told me to sit calmly and not rush. I said, "Ma'am, I didn't do anything." She spoke to me more out of discomfort than sympathy. One day in English class, the teacher made everyone stand up and read aloud one by one. When it was my turn, a girl loudly said, "Sir, she will limp even while speaking." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I controlled myself and finished. The teacher didn't praise me, just called the next student. Along with the kids' behavior, even the teacher didn't treat me like a special student, it was more like I was a burden to the school. Once in math class, when I asked a question because I didn't understand, the teacher said, "Even easy questions seem hard to you. Sit down." He was just taking advantage of my silence. Every day, my mom would ask how school was going. I'd smile and say it was fine but hid the truth in my heart. She was already so worried, and I didn't want to burden her more. One rainy day, all the kids went out to play in the wet field. I was trying to walk on the wet ground when a boy said, "Look at the limping dance." Everyone clapped. I froze, wanting to run but my feet stuck to the ground. On the way back, Mom noticed the color on my face and for the first time asked what really happened. I looked down silently. That night, she decided to complain to the school principal, but he said they try to treat all children equally, but they can only try, not guarantee. Mom gave up and decided to pull me out of school. At home, she said, "You will stay home now, dear. This school isn't for you." I felt a silent scream inside me that only the walls heard. After that, days passed in sameness, no bag, no uniform, no morning runs. I'd sit by the stove with Mom, counting days, washing dishes or flipping old books, but inside I felt empty. I stopped speaking. Time seemed to freeze for me. I'd sit on the roof staring at the sky, wondering if this world was just these four walls and silence. But I promised myself I'd never complain again, not to Mom or the world. If anyone was to change, it had to be me. Maybe then, for the first time, my heart felt a little brave. My 3 brothers had grown up, married one after another, and their wives brought new colors, clothes, and scents. But nothing changed about my existence, it was still tagged with that label, Natasha the limping girl. The first sister-in-law, Sarah, was from a middle-class family, talkative and sharp-tongued. The second, Emily, was gentle but two-faced, and the youngest, Lily, laughed at everything. They often sat chatting together, but whenever I passed by, they suddenly fell silent, barely able to hide their laughter. One day, Lily was in the kitchen, and I brought her some dough. She smiled and said, "What's up, Natasha? Today you actually worked straight." Emily quickly replied, "She's just learned that some prince will come and take her away." Sarah laughed and said, "Not a prince, sister. Only a blind man would marry this limping girl." I froze, my hands covered in dough, feeling hollow inside. Emily looked down, probably embarrassed, but said nothing. I silently went back to my room. There was no place for me in that house now. Sarah said, I've decorated this room, take the old backyard room. Emily said, why do you even need a room? Finish your chores and go to the roof. Lily joked, maybe the roof air will clear your mind. Mom was still my shield but tired. She knew arguing invited fights and often said, dear, endure it. This is home, where hierarchy exists. I just nodded, repeating inside that this was my home. When guests came, Lily kept me in the kitchen, saying, don't come in front of them. People ask questions. Emily spoke to guests without defending me, saying, yes, we have a sister-in-law who's a bit weak. One day, I bravely told Mom I wanted to learn sewing to keep busy and maybe improve. Mom was happy, but Emily said, why so? You don't even have your own clothes. Who will come as a customer? Lily mocked, yeah, she'll open a Natasha brand and sew for free while getting insulted. Sarah said gently, let her try, it'll pass the time, but her tone was sharp too. All the household work was my responsibility. The sisters-in-law wouldn't even lift a broom in front of each other, and Mom had no courage to speak up. I spent days cleaning and cooking. Sarah said, we have a robot, a limping one, but she's a machine that does all the work. One day Mom got sick with fever for 2 days. I gave her medicine on time, made warm water, cooked special food. Sarah said, Mom is just surviving because of Natasha, otherwise, she'd be gone by now. I went silent hearing that. Mom heard it too but said nothing. At night, stroking my hair, she said God would give me the best revenge for their behavior. Sometimes I wanted to sit with my brothers, but I knew they preferred distance. If I sat with them, one of the sisters-in-law would call me for chores, Natasha, the dough is finished. Natasha, check the stove. Natasha, clothes are on the roof. It was as if I existed only for work, not for life. The house wasn't a home anymore, it was a place where you could breathe but not feel free. On those walls, someone had carved wounds with words, and the constant negative comments pierced my bones. I stayed silent because I knew if I spoke up, it would break my mother even more, and I was walking on the support of her strength. I kept praying that if this was my test, may I be granted patience, and if this was the world's judgment, may I have the strength to accept God's decision. Going outside became a necessity, never a desire. Sometimes, my mother would send me to buy groceries, moments when I felt even smaller and the world more merciless. One afternoon, my mother handed me a note with a tired voice and asked me to get some things from the corner shop, as we had run out of salt. Holding the note tightly in my fist and adjusting my scarf, I walked down the street, feeling the sting of laughter around me. 4 girls, probably returning from college, passed by. I didn't look at them, just kept my eyes down, but one wasn't silent. She said, look, Natasha's limping. Imagine what her husband must be like. He'd run away just seeing her. Who would accept someone like her? She'll probably stay with her mother forever, and they laughed loudly. Their laughter hit my heart like a sharp pain, and for a moment, it felt like the leg pain had returned. My note was sweaty in my hand, and though I didn't look at them, I heard every word clearly. I thought of turning back, but then I remembered my mother who needed rest. When I reached the shop, the shopkeeper looked at me and said with no reaction, yeah, Bruce is limping, what do you want, as if that had become my real name. I gave him the note, and he muttered about the same items every week, and 2 boys standing behind laughed, with one saying, Uncle, give her something to help her walk, the journey's tough, right? The shopkeeper chuckled, yeah, send her to the hospital, and laughed again. I stood there like a statue, saying nothing, wishing the earth would swallow me up. I took the things, paid, and silently turned back. On the way, the same girls were standing under a tree, cold drinks in hand, staring at my limp waist. Look at her walk, it's a different style, limping runway, and they laughed again. One pretended music was playing and they all twirled around me. I quickened my pace, but my heartbeat raced anxiously. When I saw the home door, it felt like reaching a place of peace. My mother opened the door, saw my face, and immediately asked if someone had said something to me. I said nothing, just handed over the things and went to my room, closing the door behind me. I sat down calmly as if nothing had happened, but inside, the silence was loud, with the question echoing again and again, who would accept someone like her? Who? This question was not just from those girls, but from the neighborhood, society, and maybe even my family. A while later, Archana, one of my sisters-in-law, called from outside, "Natasha, come downstairs quickly, Mom's calling you." I didn't respond. She insisted, "Come on, after coming back from outside, you look like a storm passed by," and laughed. I came down. Mom said she would get me some clothes stitched tomorrow. Namrata, another sister-in-law, sneered, "What will she do with new clothes? She doesn't go to functions or have relatives visit." Disha, the third sister-in-law, smiled and said, "Even if relatives come, they'll leave soon. If they stay long, they might give pity gifts." I looked at my mother. She was silent, but her eyes held the same pain that always lived with my silence. That day's burden settled deep in my heart, not just my bones. The voices from the shop, the echoing laughter in the street, the sisters-in-law's sneers, and that question reaching me from everywhere, who would accept a girl like me, built up inside like lava refusing to erupt. I kept working and moving till evening as if nothing special had happened. But at night, after everyone slept, I locked myself in my room and prayed. After praying, my heart felt a strange calm, as if something settled inside, like the lava inside had cooled down. Returning to my room, my mother stood at the door and asked what I was doing. I softly said I was praying to lighten my heart. She said that sincere prayers to God never go unanswered. The next morning, when I went to the roof, the sky seemed different. The birds and wind were the same, but everything held a hidden peace. The street noise seemed less sharp, or maybe it had lost its importance. That evening, my mother asked me to sweep the courtyard, and I got busy. Namrata passed by and quietly asked if I was praying a lot, if I was asking God for something special or had dreamed a new dream. I smiled and said yes, I was trying to please God. She didn't look surprised, maybe she hadn't expected an answer. Archana was standing nearby and signaled Namrata to stay quiet. That night again, I locked myself in my room and prayed, feeling deeply grateful for every moment I was given, every breath I was blessed with, and every trial I faced. Everything had become my strength. I was no longer living just for myself but for these moments when I saved myself from breaking. Every taunt, every joke, every silence was a test I accepted with devotion to God. My prayers strengthened my heart, but the world kept moving at its own pace. The neighbors still saw me the same way, and my mother started worrying more about my fate. In the evenings, she would sit in the courtyard, taking deep breaths as if counting her heartbeat. When I approached, she quickly changed the subject. I knew she wanted to protect me, but the storm inside her was about to spill out. One day, she sat near the stove when Disha came close and said that a woman at her husband's factory had a brother-in-law whose wife had died, leaving 3 children. The man was decent, and if Mom agreed, she would talk to him. Mom glanced at me and quietly said to go ahead, saying you never know when fate will favor whom. I stayed silent. Disha secretly told Archana, and that night Namrata said, "Good, someone's ready to take Natasha home." 2 days later, they came to our house. Mom told me to wear new clothes and get ready properly, saying guests were coming. I looked at her with questions, and she quietly said it was just to meet and talk. In her mother's eyes, there was a silent plea, and I asked no more. When the guests arrived, it wasn't a young man but an older man, accompanied by 2 younger men, probably his sons. He smiled at me but remained mostly quiet, observing everything around. After tea, he approached my mother and said, "Sister, we'll talk again." My mother asked what he thought of me. He glanced at me briefly and replied, "Looks fine, but she walks as if the ground will break beneath her." Hearing this, my mother seemed to turn to stone. The man smiled and added, "Don't take it the wrong way, but I am raising kids. I need a whole woman. Sympathy doesn't make a marriage." Then he turned and left. My mother sat silent for a while, then came inside without looking at me, only saying, "Daughter, change your clothes." Nothing happened. That night, my Aunt Arlene said, "See, we told you not to get your hopes up over things not meant to be." Another aunt, Denise, replied, "It's rare that a proposal even comes." But hearing the truth from such people silences even Mom. I stayed quiet, neither crying nor laughing, thinking maybe God was showing me all this to prepare me. The next day, my mother visited a family friend's house and came back very quiet. I set the table, but she didn't eat and paced the rooftop for a long time. That night she said, "Don't expect any proposals now. Whatever comes, you must accept. We've seen enough. Now people do favors, not marriages." Days passed with no mention, until one evening she returned with a woman who worked at the factory where my Aunt Denise's younger brother worked. The woman said, "My uncle's friend is an older man, kind-hearted, widower, wants to marry. If you agree, I'll send him." Mom was silent, so was I. 2 days later, he came about 55, with weak eyes behind thick glasses, dark complexion, and a cane. Mom told me to sit across from him. He looked at me, nodded, then laughed after noticing my limp and said, "You didn't tell me she can't walk properly. I'm here to marry, not for sympathy. How will she take care of me if she can't take care of herself?" Then he left. Mom dropped her teacup. Aunt Arlene quietly told Denise, "Now even the 50-year-old left." Mom said nothing, just sighed and said, "I'll accept whoever comes for my daughter." That night I stayed awake, staring at the stars, feeling they asked if more suffering was left. I whispered, "Yes, because maybe God hasn't decided yet. He's just preparing me." Mom seemed to have given up. Her worry now mixed with helplessness. She cooked quickly, slept early, spoke little, and her heart seemed empty. One evening, as I washed dishes, Mom went to Arlene's room and closed the door. I could hear her pleading, "You're the eldest daughter-in-law, talk to your husband, the eldest son. Ask him to do something about her marriage." Arlene replied they had tried many times, even he was ashamed now. Mom was silent. The next day, after breakfast, Mom called my younger brother, Sam, and said, "Son, your sister is grown now. People's taunts are killing her. Think about her." Sam put the newspaper aside and bluntly said, "Mom, forgive us. We tried, but no one wants a relationship like hers. We can't keep begging." The youngest brother, Andy, said, "Mom, even you must accept Natasha's fate is beyond us. Didn't you hear what they said last time?" Mom's eyes sparked fire as she stood looking at me, saying, "You're the only disgrace left in my life. I wish you were never born or died at birth so I wouldn't have to see these days." The teacup slipped from my hand to the floor. I didn't look up. Mom rushed to her room and closed the door. The aunts were in the kitchen, talking. Denise bit her tongue and said, "Now even Mom is tired. Anyway, if Natasha marries, we'll all be happy." Arlene stopped her. Who would marry her at this age? Mom found no peace, sat listening, then quietly went inside. That night she didn't eat. Her harsh words echoed in my head, the first and maybe last time so stern, but my heart bore no burden because I was no longer Natasha who broke at every word. I knew human pain has no cure from humans. I sat down to pray, turned off the light, worshipped quietly, and prayed deeply, saying, "My heart is not heavy today. I want only your will. Whatever the world says, you are with me, and I have patience and no fear." After prayer, my heart felt lighter and I slept quickly. Next morning, Mom avoided my eyes. I said nothing, just focused on work. The aunts stayed in their rooms, brothers were busy with tea, breakfast, and newspapers. Everything seemed unchanged, as if nothing had happened. And maybe that was the greatest pain, that my existence didn't even count. In the afternoon, a friend of Denise's came asking for water. I brought a glass on a tray. She looked closely at me, then whispered to Denise, "Is this your sister-in-law?" Denise laughed loudly, "Yes, this is our famous limping Natasha." I stared at their faces, feeling like a spectacle, like my life was a joke to them. That evening, Mom chose some clothes and said, "If anyone still comes, no matter who or how, I'll say yes. I'm done hearing people's talk." I gently took the clothes and said, "Mom, I have no complaints. Not from you, nor from those who mocked me. Only one thing, if God agrees, then all will be well." Mom looked at me surprised, maybe for the first time my words touched her deeply. But she said nothing and quietly went to her room. After everyone slept that night, I went to the roof, looked at the sky full of lights, and silently repeated, God, I am willing. I accept all your will. If your will is to test me, then I accept it. And if this silence is the answer to my prayers, I accept that too. In that moment, I felt truly free because the hearts I hoped for had closed. Only one door remained open, that of the higher power, and I held on to that hope. The day was still young, sunlight soft. I was lying down while my mother sat in the yard shelling peanuts, and I was washing dishes when suddenly the doorbell rang. Mother peeked and then asked, "Oh, who is it at this hour, wearing torn old clothes with a sack on his shoulder?" It was the neighborhood's old junk dealer who came twice or thrice a month. His face was always the same, stern and silent. He said, "Sister, I'm not here for junk today. I've come to say something." Mother looked at him sharply and asked what it was. He bowed slightly and said he heard Natasha's marriage proposals weren't working out, and if she agreed, he wanted to marry her. Time seemed to freeze as the dishes slipped from my hands and water kept flowing. Mother seemed like stone, unable to grasp what she was hearing. She asked softly, "What are you saying?" He said he had no one, old though he might be, but his heart was pure and he would respect Natasha. He wiped sweat from his brow with an old handkerchief, bowed, and stood quietly. Nat's sister-in-law laughed from the window, saying, "Wow, now even the junk dealer is proposing." Another sister-in-law came inside and said, "He doesn't know respect or what a wife is, to him, she's just a sack." Mother stayed silent, then said, "Go now, let me think." The junk dealer nodded and left like someone who had made a deal but returned empty-handed. Mother was quiet all day, neither speaking nor asking questions. In the evening, she called her sons and said, "You've seen everything, now the junk dealer wants to marry Natasha. What should I do?" The elder brother shrugged, "We have no objection. Marry her to anyone you want." The younger brother lit a cigarette and said, "At least the taunts will stop. If anyone says anything, we'll just say she's married." Mother looked at me, I lowered my gaze. For a moment, her hand reached out but stopped. She said, "If he comes tomorrow, the marriage will happen silently, no noise or celebration, just a simple send-off." That night, one sister-in-law congratulated me quietly, "Congratulations Natasha, now you'll be called a wife, just with a sack too." Another laughed, "Good, one less burden on us." I stayed quiet. The tiredness on Mother's face spoke louder than words. The next morning, the junk dealer arrived on time, wearing a white kurta pajama with an old watch on his wrist, and the priest came too. The wedding happened peacefully with all rituals at home. The sisters-in-law watched silently from the kitchen, no one even blessed me. Mother held my hand, looked in my eyes, and said, "Daughter, we all have lost. Maybe now you'll win." I smiled and stepped outside. The street wall was silent, but eyes behind windows were watching. Everyone knew Natasha the lame was married to the junk dealer. The path was simple but every step took me into a new world. I told myself this marriage wasn't my destiny's result, but a test of my patience. If the higher power had decided this, there must be a hidden blessing. The junk dealer stayed silent all the way home. When we entered, the floor was white, the house beautifully built with stone tiles, expensive furniture, glass tables, and priceless paintings on the walls. I stopped at the door, heart racing as if this were a dream. The junk dealer invited me in. I walked slowly into the drawing room, amazed at the neat surroundings. Still in his white kurta, with his watch on, he sat down, leaned his cane on the wall, and slowly removed a mask covering his nose downwards. Then he took off a white wig from his head. I was stunned. The man before me was not the old junk dealer but a young, handsome man, tall and about 30 years old. Shocked, I asked, "Who are you?" He smiled and said, "I am not who you thought. I'm Deputy Commissioner Bruce Wilson. This bungalow is mine, and this whole act was part of my plan." I immediately asked, "But why?" He said, "One day I was passing your neighborhood in my car and saw you at the street corner. Some girls were mocking your walk and laughing, but you didn't say a word, no complaints, no turning back, no tears, you just kept walking quietly. That was the first time I saw strength in silence. I listened as he explained how that night he decided to know me better, gathered information, studied my family, then disguised himself as the junk dealer to come to our door. He said he wanted to see how I would handle myself when everyone got tired and no support remained. My heart raced, knowing every moment I felt worthless was actually a test of my value. He said he wanted to see if a girl, mocked by society, was weak or made of steel inside. I had never questioned his behavior or my mother's decisions, never complained about my fate. Hearing this, I lowered my eyes. He said, "When I brought you inside this house, you never asked why it was so big or how a junk dealer could be so rich. You silently accepted the fate's decision, so today I sit before you with my true face." For me, it was unbelievable. I asked, "What did you find in a girl like me?" He said, "Girls like you, patient, wise, and sincere, are rare. Ones who don't bow before the world, only to the higher power. Who are unbreakable by taunts and stand firm in truth." I gently asked if this was all a test. He said yes, but he hadn't just tested me, he had learned from me. He told me that I was already married to him, that I was now his responsibility, and that what I thought was fate handing me over to a junk dealer was actually God entrusting me with a treasure. Hearing this, a strange calm filled my heart, as if years of struggle slipped away in moments. The old man I had silently accepted was never real, he was a wise and honorable man, Bruce, a young and respected deputy commissioner. Still stunned, my silent questions were read in his eyes. Sitting beside me, he said, "Natasha, I tested you to be sure you're the one with whom I can live carefree." My head bowed, a storm inside me, years of taunts and wounds had shaped me, yet in a moment, my identity changed. Bruce poured a glass of water and said, "Today is the first day you are not just a daughter-in-law but the mistress of this house." What I endured was not just a trial but a test that changed his heart. When I asked when he knew I was worthy, he said it was the day your mother heard the taunts but said nothing, and you silently accepted the deal. The moment relatives left without saying a word and you never complained, that day, I decided I wanted to know you by your character, not words. I listened quietly, every word connected with my moments of silence. He said others see weakness and step back, but your inner strength drew me. I asked if he ever feared what people would say. He laughed and said he knew the world's gaze well but only cared about what he saw, and he saw a light in me that noise hides. There was no pride in his voice, only certainty. "Your patience humbled me, your simplicity changed me, and your honesty made me see having a wife like you is an honor." I looked at my hands, the same that washed dishes and clothes, now held with respect. He said, "Natasha, you need no more questions or explanations. The life you lived, I want to change every moment of it." I softly said, "Not change, but embellish." He smiled and promised to do whatever makes me happy. "A girl like you needs no lessons, just an environment to live freely." He asked if I wanted to start this life anew with him, without shadows of the past. For the first time, I voiced my heart. If this was God's will, there was no question of refusal. I accepted everything, a gift from above. He nodded silently, and time seemed to pause. That night, Bruce showed me a room specially decorated for me in soft colors, curtains and lamps chosen by him. "This is your new world, built on your patience." Standing at the door, I thought of the Natasha who once buried in street taunts, now standing here with honor. Bruce left with one last thought: "The world judged you by your body, but I saw your worth through your patience, and this precious thing will always stay with me." I quietly entrusted everything to God, who returned it to me today, something I never even dreamed of. It was a new beginning, and most joyfully, I was no longer just Natasha, I had become someone's complete love, respect, and worth. Though only a few days had passed since the wedding, the peace, dignity, and ease felt like shade after scorching years. I was now in a new world where no one called me Natasha the Lame. I was known by my husband's name and deeds. He always called me Natasha darling, with love and respect in his words, saying all his love was only for me. His love touched my soul. One morning, Bruce brought a large box and said, "Something special for you." Smiling, he opened it to reveal an artificial leg, just like I had seen at the therapy clinic. I said it looked expensive. He replied, "Yes, but not more than your happiness. The best things aren't expensive, and you deserve it." He then arranged an appointment with a city physiotherapist. The doctor checked me thoroughly, and my condition improved. With regular therapy, the change became clear. Weeks passed with 4 therapy sessions each week, and on other days Bruce came with me, sometimes encouraging me inside the clinic. After weeks, I took 2 steps without support for the first time. Bruce was standing there, thrilled, with tears of joy shining in his eyes. It felt like he was happier about my walking than I was. Pride was on his lips as he said, "You did it, Natasha. 2 steps now, but the journey is yours." I could now stand unsupported for longer periods. Slowly, I was able to walk, and most importantly, I could feel proud of myself. I had a special room, a library, and a sewing machine, a peaceful place to read. I started working as an online tailor and began taking orders. I was finally doing something in my own name. One day, I went to the corner shop owned by an uncle who used to mock me. When he saw me walking, his eyes widened in surprise, but he said nothing because he had no words left to make fun of me. The same neighborhood girls who used to laugh at me now silently watched me. Even my family was stunned to see me. One girl whispered, "That's the same Natasha the lame," and another quietly said, "Yes, but it looks like she's now the queen of her fate." I didn't look at them because I no longer needed to explain myself. My sisters-in-law were shocked, their eyes wide with disbelief that their sister-in-law's fate could be so different. The same women who once mocked me were now asking me to sit with respect in their home. My mother was very happy too. From my life, I learned that one day, every rejected thing in the world becomes precious. The pain that feels like a test today turns into a gift from above tomorrow. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get the next update first.